Hi, I'm Omni Sunday. My videos aren't really about drawing, but I do draw most of my visuals, so I thought it might be interesting to have a little tutorial. I didn't get a formal education on this, so for most of the shapes and stuff, all I can say is that trial and error helps, but I can show you some neat techniques I've learned over the years. I'm hoping the main takeaway from this video is that anyone can learn how to draw, no matter how old you are. I know lots of the best artists have been doing it since they were kids, but as a wise man once said, "You think I came out the pussy drawing fucking Mozart?" I started drawing seriously when I was around 13, and after 7 years, I'm still not that good. It takes a lot of time and practice, but what matters is that you have fun along the way. Everyone takes different amounts of time to learn, and I'm sure that someone can be better at drawing than me in a whole lot less than 7 years, whether they started at 6 years old or 60. So if you feel like you want to draw, don't be afraid to try, and just have fun. You don't have to give up hours, just however long you want to. I get it though, I've always wanted to know how to sing, but I'm always like, I can never. Really though, I should follow my own advice and try it. Anyway, to start, I use Creatura for my drawing software, just because it's free, and instead of the freehand brush tool, I use the dynamic brush. I don't know the difference, but I've heard it's better for some reason. I always start my actual drawing with a rough sketch using a low opacity pencilish tool, where I basically just draw what I want to. I wish I had a secret or something, but no, that's it. I've heard that you should focus less on the whole and more on individual shapes, and I'm sure that helps a lot of people, but for me it kinda just makes the art look like a worse version of something I'm copying, rather than giving me an idea of poses and the shape of it and stuff like that. It's also not that fun for me to just copy something one for one, so if I have a reference, I'll use it pretty loosely. My recommendation if you're just starting out is to draw something really simple and maybe cute. After I draw this in my usual style, I'll do a second, simpler version you might want to follow along with. Next, for the actual line art, I can just go over it cleanly with the default brush if I'm going for something simple or lower effort, but normally I'll do a different pencil brush at 100% opacity. The most important thing is that instead of just going over it all at once, I make the outline thicker in places that should be shaded. For almost all of my art, the light source is at the top left, so you should see the thinnest outlines there and the thickest ones on the bottom right. It's technically a bit more complicated than that, but that's the general rule. If something's in the background or maybe covered by something or whatever reason it might have to be more shaded, it'll have a thicker outline. You might notice that going on especially in the legs. If I'm not going to shade something, I skip this step, but usually I will shade it, so what I'll do is I'll go over the whole thing before I color it in, and I'll use yellow for highlights and blue for shading. It doesn't matter what color you use as long as they're on different layers, but I pick yellow and blue. This isn't something you have to do to shade it all, but you'll see why I do it in a bit. It's just easier for me, so if something else is easier for you, please don't feel like you're doing it wrong or something. There's no wrong way to draw. Unless you're missing the paper or something, I don't know. Anyway, the light source is on the top left, so I shade mostly on the bottom right. I don't have much advice for where to shade, but if you look at enough things, you'll get a decent idea of what to shade. If it makes you feel any better, it took me forever to shade well too. Next thing I'll do is delete those layers I just drew. Just kidding, I'm making them invisible for future use. I'll start by coloring, and this is where you can have all the fun you want. During this section though, I'll tell you a bit about color theory, or I guess, color theory as I figured it out. There are 3 colors, red, green, and blue. Depending on how much you have of each, you can make any color you can think of. The values go from 0 meaning nothing and 255 as all of it, in order of red, green, and blue. For example, 25500 is pure red. 000 is black, 255, 255, 255 is white, 255, 255 is magenta, and so on. Using these values, you can somewhat easily figure out the opposite of any color. For example, if blue is 00255, the opposite is 255, 2550, which is yellow. This is useful for figuring out a good color to go with another one, but it also tells you why I use yellow and blue for shading. Certain colors look lighter to us than others. If you look at a color wheel in grayscale, yellow will look the lightest and blue will look the darkest. There's reasons for that, but I won't get into it now. If anyone's curious enough to ask in the comments, I'd be happy to info dump about it though. All this theory will help us out in the next section, shading. Of course, if you want to shade, you can just pick a darker version of the original, or even just do what I used to do and shade in black to change the opacity later. But almost a year ago, I figured something out that is not only fun for me, but I think it gave a nice upgrade to my art style. My girlfriend describes it as gummy, which could be positive or negative depending on how you look at it, but it's something I really like and I guess that's what matters. Basically, if I'm highlighting something, I'll take the original color and not only make it lighter, but also shift it a bit towards yellow. If I'm starting from blue, I'll take the route from cyan to green to yellow rather than magenta to red to yellow, just because I think that looks better. If I'm shading something, I'll not only make it darker, but also shift it a bit towards blue. If I'm starting from yellow, I'll go on the route from red to magenta to blue rather than green to cyan to blue, again just because I think it looks better. I hope that made sense, but honestly I don't know how to explain it better if not. Feel free to ask clarifying questions in the comments and I'll try my best to answer. For example, with the Griho Gusaluco I'm drawing, most of it is greenish yellow, specifically with a ratio of 2 green to 1 red. To highlight, I'll shift it yellow, making it 3 green to 2 red. To shade, I'll shift it away from yellow with a fully green hue and no more red than blue. You don't have to be that exact, I just do that because something's wrong with my brain. Also, if you didn't notice, the way I do this isn't by manually going over what to shade. I'm actually selecting everything opaque in the shading layer, then intersecting that with everything opaque in each layer, so it's not only less work but also more consistent. That's why I do the shading layer at the start. If you don't want to do the weird color theory shit, you can just skip it. But yeah, after that I've got the final art. Woohoo! This took me about 30 minutes to draw. I don't know how much I'll have to speed up to make the video watchable, but I'll try to remember to add that at the start. This was pretty complex though, which obviously isn't ideal if you're just getting into art. So I drew another simpler one. I'll use the base sketch from the first one to draw this, but you really don't have to use that at all. I'm drawing in a dark-ish version of the main color I want to use. I basically went over the base sketch but cleaner, so it's just the one line with the same width. To color it, I just went over parts I'd probably shade, but the main thing I want to express with this is the shape I'm coloring it in. When I draw on paper, the direction of the lines is much more important compared to digitally, especially when coloring. Basically, you want to imagine the 3D shape of what you're drawing and go in that sort of direction. I don't know how to explain this at all. Do you get what I'm saying? Tell me in the comments if you get what I'm saying or not. I've never really made a video like this before, so what I'm doing is super experimental, and I'd love some criticism on how to teach people stuff like this. That's all I've got for this video. It was a quick one to make, but that's because I'm working on some real good stuff in the background. I'm so close to aspect anthropology, I swear. Check out my Patreon to support me and get your name at the end of my videos. Thanks Captain Kobop, Art of Dying, and Mr. Kill. Thank you also for viewing and maybe even commenting. Bye!